If they running their mouth, then they looking for trouble. Ran right up in the knowledge, now they back in the huddle. See, they know we can fight, new content every week. Me and Dr. Clyde, keep on bringing the heat. Now they know that we driven, and they know we quitting. Yoshi and the winners, keep on bringing the energy. Unity, unity, unity. See, they know we ain't stopping, and they know they got problems, and they ran out of options. If they know we got a problem, can't let it go unsolved. Bring back learning, Afrocentric history, we see tomorrow. Karma is karma, I say what I say out here underwater. Till I see I fall off, then I bring y'all up on note. I'm back up on my Clyde winners, 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 Clyde winners. Divine winters, Clyde winters, mind bender, Clyde winters. I'm Richard, ride with ya, master teacher, create masters, Clyde winters. Give respect to the elder, Clyde winters. I know somebody out there looking for me. I told you somebody out there looking for me. I think there's somebody out there looking for me. I think there's somebody out there looking for me.
We have to live by God. We have to live by God. I have not done wrong. I have not robbed. I have not stolen. I have not drank. I have not told lies. I have not stolen food. I was not stolen. I have not fornicated with the fornicator. I have not caused anyone to weep. I have not dissembled. I have not transgressed. I have not discussed secrets. I have brought no lawsuits. I am not wrong. I am not struck kill. I am not transgressed the law. I have not denied it. Except when I'm talking about on the tongue. I have not made extolling. I have not bragged. I have not cursed. I have not been violent. I have not confounded truth. I have not been impatient. I have not cursed
Dr. Winter's legacy is a testament to the power of knowledge and the unyielding spirit of exploration. His impact is felt worldwide, as he shares and enlightens at conferences, symposiums, and collaborative projects. His voice is a beacon in the academic world, challenging, inspiring, and always educating. His journey reminds us that the quest for knowledge is never-ending, and its impact is timeless. Dr. Winters teaches us to challenge the narratives and to learn with an open mind. As he always says, B1 is not a group, it's a lineage. Let his story inspire everybody to pursue knowledge relentlessly and to always seek the truth. Now let us welcome in the grandfather of research, the Trill OG himself, the Honorable Dr. Clyde Winters.
Oh, what up, though? Somebody looking for me? What up, family? Today is the day. Today is the day. How you doing, Zachary? S.A. Smith. What up, though? And Joan. You know, it's very important to really think about the fact that you guys make my day. Yes, yes, yes. You guys make my day. You know, it's very interesting and it's kind of inspiring. And what's inspiring is the fact is to know that out there, in a sense, there are people, you know, that's just like me, you know, because most people, they're not like us. They're not like us. You know, we love each other. We love our family. We love our race. We love who we are. And there's nothing wrong with that. I remember back in the day, a lot of people used to get up, they say, Dr. Winters, why do you always talk about loving your people? I said, you have to understand that white people love their people. Most white people love their race. And because most white people love their race, they don't hate you because you love your race. They may have other reasons, maybe not to dislike you, maybe dislike you just because you're black. And that's one of the reasons that we have the critical race theory is that they hate you. Number two, they want to kill you. And number three, they created a system of racism, which is supported by worldwide white supremacy to keep them on top and keep us on the bottom. But the thing is, this is that it's very important to understand that they don't hate us because we love each other. No, that's far away from the fact. See, what it is in a sense is that they like to play a kind of divide and rule. But today has been kind of a gloomy day. In fact, it's raining now. And but I was able to get a little melanosynthesis earlier today. The sun came out for a while, and I was out there in the sun to try to drink it, bringing all that solar energy from the sun to, to get me invigorated, to really, help me to be me. And that's through that melanogenesis. But it's very important to understand that I was thinking today about what makes us supermen and superwomen. Yes. FBA, we're supermen, we're superwomen. FBA, because of our culture, we are the supermen and superwomen of the world. Everybody tries to emulate us. And the reason they try to emulate us is because of the fact, in the sense that we are the culture of America. And we are worldwide civilization, If it wasn't for Louis T. Lattimore and some of our other great researchers, we wouldn't have the light bulb. We wouldn't have the telephone. Yes, we wouldn't have the light bulb or the telephone. We wouldn't have electricity running through the homes. We invented toilet tissue. That's my favorite invention, And we wouldn't have personal computers. We wouldn't be able to navigate on the World Wide Web because, see, our culture is not just the food we eat. Our culture is not just, in a sense, the music we make. Our culture is also the great inventions. How you doing, Jesse? Our culture is also the great inventions that we create. Yes, we're creators. We're creators. I remember back in the day, back when I was in my, mid to late 20s, after I graduated from university, we used to go downtown and we used to go to the theater, and after the theater on Friday nights, after the theater, there was used to be an Burger King, up on downtown, and it was in the theater area. So on Friday nights, after people go to the theater, they would go to this Burger King, and we would have debates, we would have arguments, and we would, in a sense, people would just come in and join in. It was kind of fun. It was something that I thought was real cool back in the day. And then one day this white guy came up, and he said, "Hey," said what? He said, you look at me and I'm from Connecticut. And he said, you look at me and you say, aha, I'm a white guy. Yes, I'm a white guy, but my ancestors were all black, and the thing is this, that you have to understand is that as black people, we are creators. As black people, we are creators. And he said, but it's the Caucasians, it's the white folks, second frequency. Those people, in a sense, they just make our creations look good. Always remember that. You see, that's what makes us Superman, Sirius B. That makes us Supermen. That makes us superwomen, because people are always trying to follow us. People are always trying, in a sense, to appropriate our culture, appropriate our language, to appropriate everything we do, our dress. And that's because the fact, in a sense, is that we went through an ethnogenesis. And this ethnogenesis was that they brought to America, and they made black people chattel slaves. The first chattel slaves were Aboriginal Indians, and these Aboriginal Indians, whenever they would go and fight a war against the against the settlers, the Caucasians. Once they lost the war, they were often made slaves, and they had to work on these plantations, mainly tobacco plantations. And so then the first chattel slaves on the American continent were, in a sense, Aboriginal black people. Okay, then around between 1630 and 1660, they began to send over here. How you doing, Sister Shanice? They began to send over here, black Irish, and they sent them over here as chattel slaves. They didn't send them over here as indentured servants. No, that was for the white Irish. But the original Irish that came here beginning in 1630, they were, in a sense, black Irish. They were Catholics, and the British, in a sense, hated them because of their practice of the Catholic religion. So we had on the plantations cultivating tobacco, and by that time, indigo. We had on the plantations, Aboriginal blacks. And by the 1630s up to 1660, we began to see black Irish being sold into chattel slavery, you see. During that period, sub-Saharan Africans were mainly indentured servants. That meant as indentured servants, they worked for 7 years, and they were given land, and they were able, in a sense, to start off into their own paths. But around 1660, they began, in a sense, to need more and more workers. And we had, in a sense, what was called the Bacon Rebellion. And the Bacon Rebellion, how you doing, Mike? The Bacon Rebellion was just, in a sense, that people who were indentured servants, they were trying to make ways to make the indentured servants into full-time chattel slaves. A lot of the indentured servants fought against it, but the so-called Negroes, those people who were being brought to America from Africa, they were made into chattel slaves. So we had on the plantation Aboriginal blacks. We had on the plantations black Irish, and we had on the plantation, sub-Saharan Africans. And what happened, in a sense, is that there was, in a sense, an ethnogenesis. And this ethnogenesis, what it was is that, as Aboriginal black people, black Irish, and sub-Saharan Africans, as they began, in a sense, to mix on the plantations, they began, in a sense, to be able to produce children. What we find, in a sense, how you doing, Afro Bubble? What we find is that we became a new population. This ethnogenesis, in a sense, placed within us as foundational Black Americans, the creativity, the feelings of innovation, the knowledge of 3 continents. Yes, 3 continents: America, Africa, and Europe. Those were combined in us. See, is it any wonder? Think about it. Is it any wonder that they're going through this process of ethnogenesis, Afro Bubble, going through this process of ethnogenesis? This is what made us the supermen of today, the superwomen of today. This is what gives us, in a sense, how you doing, Tony Touch? This is what allows us to be able to be, the supermen and superwomen of the world. Yes, you're absolutely right, Tony. What Tony Touch says, are all Jamaicans Black Irish? No, all Jamaicans are not Black Irish. All Jamaicans, in a sense, many of them are Black Irish, because remember, Oliver Cromwell, because of the fact they wanted to get things popping in Jamaica, they wanted, in a sense, to send a lot of Black Irish to Jamaica. There was already, in a sense, many people who were the original slaves. The original slaves in Jamaica, they were either the Aboriginal Amerindian, the Aboriginal Caribbean Indians, or they were Amerindians. Yes, they brought a lot of Black Indians, Aboriginal Black Indians to Jamaica as slaves. Then after they brought in the Black Irish, they later brought in a sense, the Sub-Saharan Africans. Therefore, in a sense, there was, yes, in Jamaica, there was an ethnogenesis, but the problem with Jamaica is that because of the fact that Jamaica became a colony, the people in Jamaica, they don't know in a sense their ethnic superiority over other people. They feel inferior because of the fact, in a sense, they feel that they've always been ruling themselves, which is a fallacy. But see, luckily, in a sense, foundational Black Americans, we've been able, in a sense, to take into account this joining of three continents, and we've been able to take this and produce an outstanding culture, a culture that's rich in music, a culture that's rich in food, a culture that's rich in inventions and innovations. You see, the European, he tries, in a sense, to make it appear that the place that you find innovation, the place that you find inventions in it is in the university. But the university people haven't produced ish except the atomic bomb. Yes. The other practical inventions were made in America by Black people because we went through this ethnogenesis. I think that there's a video, I think, that really shows this process of this ethnogenesis. Last night I tried to play it. For some reason it didn't work out, and we'll try to play it again and we'll see what happens.
At any given time, I may die. What's the that you don't want me to say? Ain't been big no one listen to me. Sometimes I feel like the living I made. On my grandmother within the maid. Left me behind it and left me astray. What is the truth that was going on with me? Don't make me cool and just have a nice day. Some things are just easy to say. Wish it can stop me from breathing a day. Don't have no food and they swimming on me. Out in the ocean away from the bay. I've been drifting along far away. I went up in to keep them away. See what you see, but I just cannot stay. Force me to lane and they want me to drink. Can't do the crime, that don't suit me. Mine, unfortunately, ain't my sorrow. So many follow, sleeping in hollow. Bringing the idol, listen to Carlo. Nothing to borrow, living to borrow. Nothing to call home, shooting a hollow. Shooting a inferno, how about the carnal? Some men know you, look out in the eye. They all know I'm seeing me. Hey, they say me get, that is affirmative. Call it the misery, keep the hood to the rich. Let the color quit, that's what the mission is. We are the guinea pigs, music for feeling it. Tired of the silliness, no longer feeling it. Feeling we're killing it, feeling like feeling it. Swimming this message off of the shore into the abyss. Deep in, I'm in ocean and I may be hollow. At any given time, I may be followed. I'm out the ocean and I may be hollow. At any given time, I may be followed. I'm out the ocean and I may be hollow. At any given time, I may be followed. I'm out the ocean and I may be hollow. At any given time, I may die. Worship a genie, what a genie. Take you to Feeney, how would they see me? Sleazy bikinis, nothing but weenies. Wearing a beanie, feeling bikini. Changing the scenery, Some in your misery, so many lies of me. Probably got you on TV, believe me. Pulling your memories, killing the name. They never just admit that they got me. Machiavelli could have never been sloppy. We can see it's nothing but copies. Let Sam cook up in that lobby. Billie Holiday just was a body. George Clinton committed them robberies. It seems he went for the lottery. It's all falls in one category. We all call it a mystery. I'm the villain you all see. They glory to those who all see. Pendergrass set up like Eddie Murphy. No car crash, they just hating on me. Gotta make a comeback like Bill Cosby. Kobe Bryant playing conspiracy. Get me back for taking a knee. But they just be kidding me. Like in my turban, hit when I'm swerving. Black house cursing, sipping up a curving. More laceration, installation, no motivation. Straight elimination, your innovation, alienation, annihilation. All for the taking, taking like taking. Open faking, let's personation. Who you saving? Change like Raven. Sammy Davis had to shake 'em. Who's the brave one? Now you craving. Even Jada save 'em. Taylor paving. Who we faking? Mary make 'em misbehaving. We the brave men. Before we drown in the water, got a deep dive. I'm in the ocean and I may be hollow. At any given time, I may be followed. I'm out the ocean and I may be hollow. At any given time, I may be followed. I'm out the ocean and I may be hollow. At any given time, I may be followed. I'm out the ocean and I may be hollow. At any given time, I may die. Always one who justified rain. Came from the cave, came from the bay, created the slave. Step out of water, protection is harder. Why do they bother? Over my head, first like a daughter. Same boat, same fate, only in slaughter. Still throw jet bro, same as a father. Justify life, why should it be harder? On my nation, make things water. See how they come, all as one. Force me to gun, force me to the slum. Live off the crumb, from father's hung. Best is beyond, live as one. Betraying the none, speak for the young. Nobody's dumb, maybe just some of the young. Maverick approach, truth by Yojo. And the kind will grow, just as the old go came off the old fall. E-I-E-I-O-E-O song. Turning the wheel until it's all gone. Gotta go deeper, dive with the people. Some turn lethal, neighbors is evil. Go from the right, give up the fight. No human right, kill them on sight. Many despair, many beware. I see that I'm there, I see that I'm here. Ready with flash, calling all back. Our genders are here, we the illusion, not disappear. As hard as my chin, deep dive. I'm my illusion and I may be hollow. At any given time, I may be followed. I'm out the ocean and I may be hollow. At any given time, I may be followed. I'm out the ocean and I may be hollow. At any given time, I may be followed. I'm out the ocean and I may be hollow. At any given time, I may dive in.
Thank you, Sister Janice. You know, I hope you guys enjoyed that video by Yoshimod. Again, I was muted for a while. Thank you, Sister Janice, for telling me. But the thing is, this is that, you know, Mike, see what up though. But the point is this, is that I love that video, because that video, what it does is that it discusses that ethnogenesis, that you know, that foundational Black Americans, and even what Jamaicans went through. Again, it's kind of sad that we don't have any Jamaicans that really love their history. We don't have any Jamaicans that are really proud of themselves. We don't have any Jamaicans that really want to, in a sense, look and seriously know who they were, know who they are. A lot of them, in a sense, they don't really, in a sense, want to believe in themselves, because they've always felt that they're in some way independent, because they had Black colonizers running them, and then they had the Europeans running them, you know. And that's the whole point. But as they said, is that, you know, we, because of the fact in America, they made sure to make everything black and white. Because they made everything black and white, it gave us a sense of blackness. It gave us a sense of understanding what Black was. And now today, due to the research of Dorvell, we know that Black, in a sense, was more than an adjective. Oh, it was kind of but it wasn't a color. We know that Black, in a sense, meant brilliant. We know that Black meant shining. We know, in a sense, that when you're B1, you're not only Black first, you're brilliant first, because that's who we are as a people. So is it any wonder? Is it any wonder that we decided over here in the United States to move away from being called African American, to move away from being called colored, to move away from being called Negro? We decided we wanted to be Black. And why did we want to call ourselves Black? Because the fact is that when you search the deeper meanings of Black, you find out that Black is not a negative term, that Black is a positive term, that Black is positive, that Black, in a sense, relates to our shining as a people, relates to our brilliance, not only in a sense in continence, not only in a sense in physiology, but we're shining also in intellect, because we're brilliant. We're brilliant. And this is very important to understand, is that when you call yourself an FBA, you're able to communicate with the ancestors. When you call yourself an African American, the ancestors, they don't know who the hell you're talking to. I don't know who you're talking to. When you're saying, please protect us African Americans, protect us Afro Americans, they don't know who the hell you're talking about. Because our Aboriginal ancestors were called Black. Our Black Irish ancestors were called Black. Our African ancestors were called Black. Therefore, when you're trying, in a sense, when you're trying in a sense to communicate, when you're trying to call on the ancestors, when you're trying to pray, when you're trying to get them to back you up, a lot of times they don't hear you when you say you're an African American, because they don't know what the hell that is. There never was an African American, you know. There never was an African American. Sirius B says, let's look what Sirius B says. He says, my third great grandfather lived on a plantation in King and Queen County, Virginia. And he didn't have the slave master's last name. His last name was Johnson, so I'm not sure if it was Aboriginal or not. It could have been Aboriginal because, as I told you before, is that Sirius B, you had to understand this. What happened is that the first chattel slaves were Aboriginal slaves. But what happened is that between 1630 and 1660, they brought about 400,000 Black Irish and Black Britons, Black Welsh. Anybody who was Catholic and Black, they brought them over to North America, the 13 colonies, and Jamaica. And what they did, in a sense, is that they brought them over to be chattel slaves. They were supposed to never return to England. Oliver Cromwell, with his evil ass, he, in a sense, wanted to make sure they never came back. And he said in Parliament that they will be sent there for perpetuity. In other words, for always. And so then that's why, and because of the fact, in a sense, that many of the Aboriginals were already on the plantation, and these Aboriginals made it with these Black Irish when they would run away from the plantation back to their Aboriginal villages, they would continue to have their name Johnson. So their descendants might be Johnson. Their descendants might be McCoy. That's why when you look at the Freeman's list, when you look at the Dawes Roll and you look at the Freeman's list, you see McCoy, you see Black, you see Winters, you see McDonald, you see McCain. All these names are in the Dawes list, and they relate to the 5 civilized tribes because of the fact that there was a lot of mating on those plantations. It was ethnogenesis taking place. You're having Aboriginals and Black Irish and Sub-Saharan Africans marrying each other. And because they were marrying each other, how you doing, Tones 5? Because in a sense, these people were marrying each other on the plantations, that ethnogenesis was taking place, you see? And as this ethnogenesis was taking place, we were in a sense being, made into a new population. We were becoming, in a sense, the supermen and women that we are today. And who are these supermen and women? These supermen and women, they are, in a sense, you and I. Because see, these supermen and women, what they are is that they reflect. They reflect, in a sense, our identities. And what is our identity? Our identity is foundational Black American. And how do we earn this identity? We earn this identity by understanding that we went through an ethnogenesis. We're not just African. We're not just Aboriginal. And we're not just Black Irish. We're foundational Black Americans because we carry all of this. How you doing, Nadi? We carry all of these genes. We carry all of these knowledge. I mean, look at it. I mean, the European Caucasian, they have to they hope that they can get their big brain people at the universities and colleges. They hope that their big brain people at the university and colleges will make inventions and push their civilizations further. And they make nothing because we are the inventors. Every great invention used today, the telephone, the electric light bulb, the computer, the resistor that goes in every electronic component, toilet tissue, machinery, the engines, all this stuff. It was invented by foundational Black Americans. It was invented by foundational Black Americans. That's why we are the culture. We are the culture. Even the cell phone, everything. We invented everything. See, without us, there would be nothing. And see, that's because the fact is that we're not only B1 Black first, we're B1 brilliant first. We're brilliant people, We're brilliant people, and we have to, in a sense, accept this brilliance that we want to run away from. Jones says, grassroots FBA respected the term African American in 1989. But then folks conned Jesse Jackson into endorsing that ish and helped get it established because they were running the NAACP. Another con. Yes, that's why today the NAACP, we don't even follow those people. We don't follow those people because we can't follow them because they're not really for us. They're not really for us, And see, that's the thing that's very important and that we have to understand, is that because of our creativity, you have to, in a sense, understand the movement. Just like now, just like a lot of people are upset because hip hop has become degenerate. But hip hop has become degenerate because we lost that. We lost that, See, and that's the problem. And that's the problem, that they lost it. Tony Trust says, I've been looking for a slave plantation in Jamaica with the surname White, but couldn't find one. That's because the fact, in the sense, is that they noticed very early, Tony. They noticed very early that many people in Jamaica and some of the other islands, they carried, in a sense, these Irish names, but they wanted to try to say, oh, they carry the Irish name because of the slave man, but then they couldn't find any slave masters that ever owned slaves in Jamaica with those names. But it goes back to the Irish name. But again, as I said, go to Sister Shanice's channel and you'll find some of my videos I've done to really explain who the Jamaican people are, their ancestry, and why we call the people who live in Britain today BB, FBB, Foundational Black Britons, because of the fact, in the sense, is that they were the original inhabitants of the British Isles. Because of their religion, they were ran off. Okay, I've been talking a little while. We're going to get started. How you doing, CGI Kid? Let's get into the presentation, and we're talking about the Kushites. They not like us. Here you can see, in a sense, when you look at this, you can see Narmer. Narmer was the first Kushite. He was called Hyksos. And then we can see Narmer leading his troops. I'm going to do a video and explain how Narmer, really, in a sense, conquered all the way to Mesopotamia. But that'll be a different story. Then we can see some of the Egyptians. As you notice, we have Remet down there. We have the Tihinu. We have the Nahisi, and then we have the Amra. And if you notice, in a sense, Remet, which were the Egyptians, and the Nahisi, they have the same garments. Yes, because they were both black. Then we see the Tihinu. They were a little more light-skinned and stuff like that, but it was still black people. We see it was the Amu. It was the Amu who were what we call Caucasians today. But you have to remember that these Amu, they did not begin to come into Egypt until after the people of the sea began to conquer the area. You can go to Patreon to see the slides. Please join my Patreon. It's my Patreon that allows me to do these presentations every week. It's my Patreon that provides me with the funds to be able, in a sense, to get behind paywalls, buy new books. Yes, I often have to buy a new book every month. And these books, they can be into the 40s and 50s, and because much of the research, I try to keep it up to date. Because I try to keep it up to date, I need these funds to be able to go further. You can always send it to my Cash App, but I like Patreon better because with Patreon, you're supporting me every month. And these monies go a long way in helping me to be able to produce these shows every week with the latest research. You're on my YouTube channel. This is the Clyde Winters Afrocentric YouTube channel. Here we have over 400 videos. I have a lot of shorts, and I also have videos on every aspect of Black history. I noticed, I was looking the other day on the internet, and I was trying to look up all the people who are talking about the indigenous Americans, and I was really surprised that a lot of them are talking about the research that I present in my videos. But a lot of you may be going to like pages like the indigenous Americans and all that type of stuff, and the stuff they're talking about, and when they're talking about my research, you can find it on this channel here. Yes, this YouTube channel, my YouTube channel. I have almost 400 videos on every aspect of Black, African, Asian, Black Asian history. Look at these videos, support my videos. Don't just come and listen to my lives. Go back and look at some of the other videos. Build up your knowledge about who you are. Build up your knowledge and understanding of where Black people came from, because when you know where we came from, you can know where we're going. See, you'll know where we're going. You can order my books at Amazon.com. So any of my books that you want to purchase, you can just order them at Amazon.com. Okay, let the researcher do the research. Yes, let the researcher do the research. Be one, Black first. Be one, brilliant first. We're Black and we're brilliant. If you really want to know how to do research, you might want to get my book, Pathfinder, Clyde Winters in Search of the Roots of Afrocentrism, a memoir. In this book, I talk about how I became an Afrocentric researcher. I talk about how growing up in Chicago, being around a lot of informative people, I talked about my trials and tribulations. I talked about my relations with Muslims, Black Power people, and how I finally, in a sense, was able to do this research over the past 40 years. This research, in a sense, that allows us to understand who we are and where we're coming from. So if you really want to find out how I became a researcher and how you can become a researcher, get my book, Pathfinder, Clyde Winters in Search of the Roots of Afrocentrism, a memoir. Also, if you're interested in doing research, then of course you can get my book, The Afrocentric Researcher. The Afrocentric Researcher is a guide to study social science research methods. And in this book, I explain how to study melanated cultures, melanated civilizations. Each page of this book is timely. If you purchase this book, it will help you to be able, in a sense, to know the research skills and the research techniques to make you a super researcher. So if you can't take my class, and even if you do take my class, you might still want to get this book, Afrocentric Researcher, because you know why? You want to let the researcher do the research, and you too can become a researcher. We're going to talk a lot about the Kushites tonight. If you want to learn more about the Kushites and their history, get my book, The Kushites, Who, What, When, Where. This is the only book that you're going to find, the only book. You're not going to find any other book. There's no other book that exists today that I've been able to find, unless somebody copying off my work. This is the only book that explains to you who the Kushites were, where they were, who they were, and their civilization. If you want to find out more about the Nile Valley, you can get my book, The Nile Valley History and the Rig Veda. In this book, The Nile Valley History and the Rig Veda, I show how the ancient Indian literature, the Puranas, the Rig Veda, how these research instruments are really books about the Nile Valley. They're not books really about India. They're about the Nile Valley. And then you can get my book, Using Common Core State Standards to Understand Kushite History. Get this book too. It can help you to be able to learn how, in a sense, to teach about Kushite history while you're still learning Kushite history. Very good book. I know. I remember when me and David Imhotep and Kaba, when we did a show on ancient America, Kaba brought up the fact that he uses that book in much of his research activities. What is FBA? FBA is not a group. FBA is not an organization. FBA is a lineage. A lineage is lineal descent from an ancestor, ancestry or pedigree. As a result, we are descendants of the African and Aboriginal blacks who built the United States. I can say the same thing about what is an FBB. FBB is not a group. FBB is not an organization. Foundational Black Britain is a lineage. A lineage is lineal descent from an ancestor, ancestry or pedigree. As a result, FBBs are descendants of the African and Aboriginal blacks who built Jamaica. Yes, yes, FBA, FBB, all the way. B1 is acknowledging your Black African ancestry and mod, not heritage. We must be race men and women proud of our culture and African Black ancestry. Black equals brilliant. Right. Black equals brilliant. Black equals shining. So what does that mean? That means that when we say B1, we're Black first. But also when we say B1, we're brilliant first. That's because we're Black and we're brilliant. Yes, we're Black and we're brilliant. They not like us. Nope. They not like us. They not like us. And the reason they're not like us is because we love ourselves. We love our people. We love learning our history. Those other people, they're not like us because they hate themselves. They don't want to know their history. They want to suffer from CAIDS, culturally acquired immune deficiency, syndrome. They suffer from CAIDS. They've lost their identity as Black people. They've lost their immunity to whiteness. And as a result, they suffer from this pandemic that allows Black people to become lost, that allows Black people to lose any sense of identity because of their lack of immunity to whiteness, and that it leads to their failure. It leads to their failure. These people, for some reason, they think they're just as good as white folks. And the minute you think you're just as good as white folks, you're already about to lose. Why, Dr. Winters, do you say that if I feel I'm just as good as white people, I'm about to lose? That's because the fact is that white people feel you're superior to them. White people don't feel that you're good as them. They feel you're better than them. White people don't feel in a sense that it's good to be part of the white status quo. They don't believe that. Because see, if white people didn't think that you were better than them, they wouldn't have a system of white supremacy to make sure that they get the privileges and benefits just off their whiteness. If white people didn't think that you were superior to them, they wouldn't, in a sense, created this system of racism in which you're put in a race that you're going to lose and they're going to win, not because of the fact, in the sense that they're superior to you, but because of the fact that they have whiteness. And it's this whiteness that allows them to be able to dominate. No, they're not like us. They're not like us. They're not like us. They're not like us. We are always proud to be members of the brilliant Black race. Yes, they're not like us. They're not like us. They're not like us. They're not like us. We always have pride in our brilliant Black race. Yes, we're Black and we're brilliant. We're B1, Black first. B1, brilliant first. We have been taught a history of lies, a history where we are the victims of white racism. These lies teach us that we are a people too weak to defend ourselves because the natural superiority of the European race over the primitive African, yes. They teach us that they're superior to us. They teach us that we can't do anything without them. And sadly, many people believe that they can't do anything without European help. Many people believe, in a sense, in Africa and the Caribbean, that the European is God. But in FBA land, we don't believe that because we know that the greatest lie in history is that we need the European to be successful. See, we've already proven that. We made the light bulb work. We made the telephone work. We invented the modern cell phone. We invented the program that allowed me, you, and us to use the computers. Yes, we're the ones who wrote that program out. because this used to be a message system that they were going to use in case of a nuclear war. But we took it and we made it so anybody can come to the internet. See? We made the cell phone. Yes, the cell phone. The cell phone. The cell phone is nothing but a computer. And yet you had Ms. Hochul, Governor Hochul of New York, saying that black kids didn't even know what a computer was. That's because they like to perpetuate lies. They like to tell lies. As a rule, under white supremacy, history is whatever white people say it is. In other words, in a sense, they try to tear down the history. They try to tear down our monuments. They try to hide from us what we've done, what we've created, what we've made, because they want us to feel in these senses that we need them. Yes, yes. As a rule, under white supremacy, history is whatever white people say it is, but that's not true. Yes. As a rule, under white supremacy, history is whatever white people say it is. Even though archaeologists have found ancient artifacts of blacks, the white supremacists demand that you ignore what you can see with your own eyes and replace it with images they make up. Yes, yes, yes. They want you to be like, look on the left-hand side. They want you to be like this brother. He's looking into the mirror, but he doesn't see himself. He doesn't see his proud heritage. But he sees, in a sense, a white man. He sees the Caucasian as the father of civilization. He feels that he will find himself if he can just be a Caucasian, if he just accepts Cade's culturally acquired immune identity deficiency syndrome. If he can just taste that, he will be, in a sense, safe. But this is what white supremacy does to you. But you're not here for this. You're not here for a whitewashing. You're not here, in a sense, because you don't believe in yourself. You're not here because you're lost or suffering from Cades. You're here because you love you and you love us. In history, the Egyptians called the people we know as the Kushites Taseti, the people of the bow. The Nehise and the Hyksos. The Kushites lived in Lower Egypt and the Kushite nation below Egypt. Yes, yes. They taught you a lie. They taught you that Egypt was invaded by the Hyksos. That's a lie. The Hyksos, that's the name, in a sense, that people in Tamic or Lower Egypt always called themselves. They called themselves the Hyksos because they were Kushites. They were Kushites. Remember, Narmer, in a sense. Remember the white crown of Egypt was, for in a sense, Upper Egypt, and it was the Upper Egyptians that unified, in a sense, Egypt, because when they, in a sense, conquered the Lower Egyptians, they forced these people who called themselves Hyksos or Kushites to become Egyptians. And this is something you have to always keep in your mind whenever you're studying Egyptian history. The Hyksos War was not a war of invasion. It was a civil war between Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. There were many Kushite nations south of Kemet. We had Wawat, Majak, Ired and Setu, Temek, Yam, Punt. These were all, in a sense, nations that people in Kemet or Egypt accepted as, in a sense, Kushite nations. Taseti, the land of the bow, also Takyentet, the frontier or borderland, was the first nome administrative division of Upper Egypt. One of 42 nomes in ancient Egypt. Yes, yes, yes. There was 42 nomes, and these nomes were kind of like cities or city-states. And each one of these 42 nomes often had their own god, and yet they still, in a sense, recognized that the superior god, the supreme god, was either Amma, Ammon, or Ra. Taseti marked the border area towards Nubia, and the name was also used to refer to Nubia itself. Here you can see some of the various Egypt. They call the A group some of the first people who founded the Egyptian civilization. And as you can see, they're talking mainly about the people in Upper Egypt. Yes, Upper Egypt. It was the Upper Egyptians, in a sense, who wanted to move away from being recognized as Kushites. Because remember, originally Taseti was the name of the Kushites. Tasseti later became the first Sepat, or Nomi of Kemet. While Lower Egypt remained a part of Kemet, the people of the region continued to refer themselves as Hyksos, Hasut, Kushite. We call the civilization of the Kushite people the Proto-Saharan civilization because the people lived in a crescent-shaped region of Middle Africa. Look over there at that map, and you can see the Fertile African Crescent. And you can see we can go from 10 drawn down to Nabta Playa, back up to Adra Boss, and it's kind of, in a sense, like a triangle, a crescent. The Proto-Saharans were called Tasseti and Tehanu by the Egyptians. The Tasseti founded the first known empire in Africa and the world and introduced writing. The people of Tasseti were called Stu. We know from the Sumerian literature that some of the greatest civilizations around that time, and these are called the River Valley civilization. These River Valley civilizations and called Sumer, which was in Mesopotamia, Delmun, which existed in Pakistan, India, and that was the Indus Valley civilization. We have Magan, and Magan is the civilization of Kemet. And then we had Maluha, and that was the civilization of Punt, you see. So we see in the sense that there was constant trade among these people. And when you read the ancient literature, the Sumerian literature, you can find out about the trading items. And you also, in a sense, learn about how they shared many culture items, Narmer was a Kushite. Narmer, in a sense, he conquered all the way from Upper Egypt all the way to Mesopotamia, and some people feel beyond. Leading his warriors out of Upper Egypt, he in a sense began to unify the people. See, the one thing that you find about African history is that if you leave it to the old people in Africa, they feel that you should live in little small towns and little small villages, you see. But it's those higher-minded people, those people who are really thinking. And they feel, in a sense, is that the way for progress is through a confederation or federal system. In other words, you have one king ruling over other kings, and you bring them into one nation. And it's by bringing them into a confederacy, a federation, that you can have, in a sense, more power. That's one of the things that Anti-Giap used to advocate. But in a sense, Narmer, he recognized this, and he took his forces. He took his forces from Upper Egypt, and he began to expand, Comedian civilization around the known world. The presence of Narmer's Hust Bula indicates that since the Levant was called Hust or Kush, since Narmer ruled the area, he was a Kushite. The modern interpretation of Gardner's Egyptian sign N25 as Kusht is wrong. There's no evidence that the T should be added to hushed. As a result, I believe that N25 was originally Hus, not Hust. Narmer leading his forces. And that's the granite head, and this granite head at the bottom on the right-hand side. This is how this is the image that we have of this great ruler, Narmer of Menes. The Kushites beginning with Narmer early colonized Levant and the rest of Eurasia. We can see some of these on the Narmer palette. We can see Narmer's name. We see in a Shrek between two bow-eyed beasts. We can see Horus. This was a symbol of the king. We see 6 papyrus plants, and these 6 papyrus plants, they were the general symbol of Lower Egypt, or perhaps symbolized the defeating of 6,000 people in the Delta. Because remember, you see, the people in Lower Egypt or the Delta, they always, in a sense, saw themselves as part of Kemet, but at the same time, they also had an affinity to wanting to be Kushites. You see, we can see the sandal bearer of the king. This was used to be a title of great honor, you see. And we can see the enemy grabbed by the hair. And on the other left-hand side, you can see many of the, these are some of the artifacts that archaeologists have found in the Levant and other places. And all of these artifacts, they point to Narmer, and they point to Narmer as he conquered, in a sense, as he conquered all the way to Sumer. And these artifacts, in a sense, represent the symbolisms, the symbols that allow us to be able to know that Narmer was a great conqueror and that he was spread throughout the Levant. That's why he left so many objects with his name on it. So take a minute and just look at some of those objects that they found throughout Lower Egypt, and also, in a sense, the Levant, almost up to Turkey. The Kushites, beginning with Narmer, early colonized the Levant and the rest of Eurasia. Here we can now see Narmer, and we can see Narmer looking at a map. He was looking at and on this map, he was plotting how he was going to control and rule the world. Remember, Narmer, he took this great civilization. He took all this knowledge that had been accumulated in a sense, and he was putting all this knowledge together. Remember, you guys hear me talk about that FBA are the new Egyptians. We're the new Egyptians because it was through Narmer's. It was through Narmer's, intelligence. It was through Narmer's perception of the world that Narmer, in a sense, was able to combine the genius of not only the 42 sepets that made up ancient Egypt, and each sepet was a different state. They had a different god, they had a different religion, but they were unified because they used, in a sense, Meta Neter as a Pan-African language or as a lingua franca. But he not only, in a sense, conquered those 42 sepets or nomes, he also, in a sense, conquered much of the Levant. He also went all the way to Mesopotamia. And what he did is that he began, in a sense, all these different people, all these people that had different ideas about their civilization, all these people who had different elements in their secret societies that made them great. He was able to unify them. And under Narmer, he was able, in a sense, to take all of this intelligence, and he was to create a Superman. Look at this. Look at how the Egyptian civilization, Kemet lasted for just about 3,000 years. 3,000 years producing knowledge, you see. And this came about by what? Through that ethnogenesis, that bringing all those people from all those different countries, all those different nationalities or ethnicities, let's say ethnicities, bringing all of them into one. And he's able to form the greatest civilization in the history of the world, Kemet. The Kushites, beginning with Narmer, early colonized the Levant and the rest of Eurasia. Again, there's that map. The Kushites were called Host in Lower Egypt and the Levant. Kushites had settled Levant since Narmer times. We find Narmer's name on jars and shreks from excavation in Israel and Palestine. For example, we found him at Tel Irani, Arad, in Besor, Halib Terence, Nahaltala, and more. A bulla dating to this period makes it clear that this part of the Negev was called Hyksos or Kush. Look on the right-hand side. You can see this bulla. And this bulla, in a sense, it shows, in a sense, that the early Levant, all the way from the Levant down into Egypt was called Host. And Host meant Kush, and Host meant Kushite, you see? And so then that's why you have to understand when we're talking about the Hyksos, we're talking about the Hyksos, and we're saying that the Hyksos invaded Egypt. That's wrong, because you can see on this bulla that the original Kushites were called Hyksos. See? We have to go and examine aspects of Egyptian history aspects of world history, we have to look at them and check the fine print, because often we've been taught lies about these people. We've been taught even lies about ancient Egypt. The Kushites did not apply herded cattle and cultivated crops. The Kushites cultivated penicetum, millet, and naphtha 7,950 BC. Yes, that was 10,000 years ago. Not 10, yeah, about 10,000 years ago. And probably herded cattle. There's no archaeological evidence of the herding of cattle and millet cultivation older than the naphtha material. Yes. They herded cattle, and look, at naphtha we see that these stone formations. And in these stone formations, our ancestors used to use these stones to record events that were taking place in the heavens. They used these stones, in a sense, to chart the migration of the planets, migrations of the moon. They used these stones to be able to have calendars that could allow them to interpret the events and to provide a time scale, a time period. It allowed them to create time. I don't know if that was a good thing or not, but because time to me, the way it's used in the European world, it can be frustrating. It can be, in a sense, burdensome. But again, it was the Egyptians who began, in a sense, and other African people before the Egyptians. They'd use these stones to be able, in a sense, to understand the movements in the heaven, understand the planets, and to be able, in a sense, to create calendars that allowed us to be able to take into account events in which we celebrate our history, or, in a sense, just to know the day-by-day happenings in our life. There's no archaeological evidence of the herding of cattle and millet cultivation older than the naphtha material. A center of cattle worship was the Kushite naphtha region in Middle Africa. At Naphtha, archaeologists have found the oldest megalithic site dating to 6,500 BC. This would make this site about 8,000 years old, which served as both a temple and a calendar. This site was found by J. McKeel Melville of the University of Colorado at Boulder and Fred Windorf of Southern Methodist University. Yes. Narmer was the unifier of Egypt. Yes, he unified Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. It was through his mastery, it was through his genius that he was able, in a sense, to create the greatest civilization in the history of the world. In fact, in the history of the universe, we don't know no other places. And now it's Kemet. Let the researcher do the research. Yes, let the researcher do the research. If you want to be a researcher, get my book, Pathfinder, Clyde Winters in Search of the Roots of Afrocentrism, a memoir. Get this book. It can tell you how I became a researcher. Once you learn how I became a researcher, it can show you that anyone can be a researcher if they apply themselves. It will show that, yes, being a researcher has its trials and tribulations, but at the same time, in a sense, you too can share and help us to know things. JP, she wrote in the chat, she wrote a very beautiful book on Southeast Asia. See, she did that research. She produced that document. She produced that history, you see. Let the researcher do the research. Also, in a sense, is that you read my book on how I became a researcher, Pathfinder, but you can also get my book, Afrocentric Researcher. An Afrocentric Researcher, it lays out how you can be a researcher, how you can do research. It explains to you how to read and interpret archaeological, linguistic, historical, and other forms of literature. It explains to you how to do quantitative and qualitative research. You learn in this book how to do a t-test if you're doing qualitative research, or chi-squares to do quantitative research. It also teaches you how to do qualitative research where the entire research is a narrative, but it's a narrative that reflects a literature review that allows you to provide extensive information to help other people learn about the civilization or culture you're talking about. Get my books, Pathfinder, Clyde Winters in Search of the Roots of Afrocentrism, a memoir to show how I became a researcher. Get my book, Afrocentric Researcher. It's a book that can help you to learn how to be a researcher, how you can learn how to do the research. Remember, let the researcher do the research. If you want to find out more about the Kushites, get my books, The Kushites, Who, What, When, and Where. Get my other book, Nile Valley History and the Rig Veda. This book will show you how the Dravidians who live in South India today, how they really originally lived in the Nile Valley and how they migrated from the Nile Valley into India to form such a great and magnificent civilization as the Indus Valley and the South Indian megalithic. And also, don't forget to get my book, Using Common Core Standards, to teach Kushite history. Using this book, you're going to not only learn about Kushite history, but you're going to learn how to teach it. And by learning how to teach it, it's going to reinforce in you an understanding of Kushite history. Get these books. Amazon.com. Who are the Kushites? In the ancient literature, the Kushites, known as Mandi speakers, Sudanese colloquial Arabic speakers, Proto-Dravidians, Sumerians, Elamites, and etc., are called Kushites. Using boats, the Kushites moved down ancient waterways, many now dried up, to establish new towns in Asia and Europe after 3500 BC. As you can see in this map, you can see this movement of people out of Africa. See this movement not only in the sense of the islands of Crete, but across to Mesopotamia to Sumer, and from Sumer into the Indus Valley, and all the way into China. Yes. The Kushites were all the way in China. The Kushites spread cultivation of penicetum millet and cattle herding in Anatolia, South Asia, and Europe. As cattle herding, Kushites frequently moved from place to place. Millet was an ideal domesticate. Millet was an especially favored crop for the mobile Kushites because the grains are 1, a high yield per plant, 2, millet is drought tolerant and can be grown in various terrains, very important. And number 3, millet has a short growing season, so pastoralists could grow and harvest their crops in time to move their camps. And 4, the panicum millet has shallow roots, so Kushite farmers could cultivate the crop with a hoe. Yes, you have to understand is that Caucasians, they copied off, in a sense, the use of the plow, but for African people, most, in a sense, Black people prefer the hoe. Even over here in America, we prefer the hoe. Ho, 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 green giant. No, that's a different story. No, I remember when my father, when I was a kid, we used to grow food out in the suburbs every summer, and we used to have to go out and hoe the food, hoe the crops, hoe the earth, make the holes, in a sense, to put in the corn. Because my father, my family came from Mississippi, so my father, he grew the 3 sisters: corn, squash, and beans. But we also grew okra, tomatoes, and stuff like that. And so every summer we would have all these good vegetables the whole summer, fresh vegetables the whole summer. Then my mother, she would can some of the stuff. My father, he liked a lot. He was very, he liked spicy stuff. So he used to take the peppers and he would can the peppers, and we would have peppers throughout the year. But again, in a sense, this is just to show how this whole idea of farming was not just important to the Kushites, but it's been an important aspect of the culture of foundational Black Americans too, because we also like that whole idea of tilling the soil, that whole idea of making things grow, that whole idea of producing things that can make us healthy and wise. The Kushites made many boats. You can find pictures of these boats throughout the Sahara, and they use these boats to move from place to place. If you notice, these boats often had sails and they had oars. And what does it mean? By the simple fact that many of these boats that Black people in Africa made had oars, that meant that they could move their boats no matter what type of weather it was. If it wasn't in the wind, they could still propel their boats because they could row the boats. And I think that this is an aspect of African navigational technique and navigational history. The Onanians were members of the Capsian population. There was continuity between the population in the Maghreb and Southern Sahara, referred to as Caspians. Ero-Mauritian and Mechtoids. The Niger-Congo speakers are descendants of the Capsian population. Capsian people did not only live in Africa, they were also present in South Asia or India. Kushites were bowmen from the Onanian culture. Here we can see one of the earliest representations of the Kushites, and you can see him on the left-hand side with that bow. That map in the middle show where they found many bone points and Iranian points, and then in the third in the pictures to the far left, you can see some of the artifacts they found, some of the jade that they worked with. Yes, Africans used to work with jade in the Sahara. You can see a skeleton. You can see, in a sense, the various fishing hooks, and also the arrows that were used, in a sense, by the Kushites to be able, in a sense, to capture game. This is why the Egyptians often referred to the Kushites as a hill people. This is supported by the various meanings of Gardner's Egyptian sign N25. The N25 sign is often pronounced as hush, hush, which meant, in a sense, Kush. So you can see these three hills are supposed to represent hush, hush, hush. The Kushite ancestors of the Dravidians, Manding, Tahinu, Temehu, colloquial Arabic-speaking Sudanese, Sumerians, etc., organized into a federal system during the Neolithic subpluvial. These early Kushites made adequate uses of local game and plant life, and they established permanent and seasonal settlements around the well-stocked fishing holes. The Kushites lived on plains punctuated by mountains and numerous points of inundation due to the frequency of rain in the ancient Sahara. The Proto-Saharans claim descent from the Ma, or Fish Confederation. The Ma Confederation includes the Egyptians, Elamites, Dravidians, Manding, and Sumerians. In honor of the great ancestor Ma, they worship a god called Amun, Aman, or Amma. In honor of this great ancestor, the descendants of the Proto-Saharans use the term Ma to denote greatness or highness. For example, in the Manding language, we have Maga, and in the Dravidian language, we have Ma. Other Proto-Saharan tribes claim direct descent from the great Ma, founder of the Fish Confederation. For example, the Manding people call themselves Ma-Indi, children of Ma, while the Sumerians were called Ma-Gari, exalted God's children. Yes. The Proto-Saharans, in honor of the great Ma, they made these statues, and you can look at these things. Look over here. In the Sahara, they see these monuments, and they call them yardanes. On the right-hand side, they call them yardanes. But look carefully. If you look carefully at these so-called yardanes, they almost look like the god Ammon. You know, I really believe that if you excavate those so-called yardanes, that you're going to find that they're really, in a sense, you know, some sort of a monument that the ancient Ma people built, and that they built these monuments. And under these monuments, I think you're going to find a lot of great artifacts and tools, inscriptions that go back to that period. So I really wish that we could go and excavate those yardanes, because I don't believe that they're just yardanes. I don't believe that these structures that look like the god Ammon was made out of the wind. I think they were made by people, and that people, in a sense, built these to represent how they honored the god Ammon, Amma, and that under these monuments is beautiful artifacts that can show the greatness of the Ma civilization as culture. The Proto-Saharans claim descent from the Ma Fish Confederation. The Ma Confederation, as I said earlier, include, in a sense, all of these various people. Other Proto-Saharan tribes claim direct descent from the great Ma, founder of the Fish Confederation. For example, I already talked about the Maende, Magaris. So again, in a sense, these people, they all, and I was very surprised when I learned this. I learned this when I was studying the Mandi language, and I read the books of Delafosse. And it was Delafosse and a couple others who found that when they questioned many of these ancient or these African groups, they all said that it was originally an ancient civilization. And they said it was the Ma Confederation. And this is what led me to research these fish people. And the reason that they consider them to be fishers is because of the fact that during the Green Sahara, it was much more wetter in the Sahara and the Sahel. And because there was much more wetter in the Sahara and Sahel, they needed engineers, they needed leaders, people who were able, in a sense, to remove the flood waters and in a sense replace it in a sense with earth, so that people could live in a happy medium. That's one of the reasons why you find that African people, Black people, have had a tradition of building their houses on mounds. And the reason they built their houses on mounds is that if it ever rained or if it was some sort of flooding, your house would still be safe. So again, in a sense, we see that this ancient confederation, this ancient federal system, was called the Ma Confederation. The common god was called Ma, the man-fish of Eridu in Mesopotamia and Syria, and ithnophilic forms, the prototype of Amun in Egypt, and the goddess Minaski of Madura in South India, the goddess of the fish eyes, the Malabar fish bearer of Mana, and the sacred fishes of the Mapila of the west coast of the Deccan. In the language of the Manding, Ma is used to refer to the ancient inhabitants of the African continent and the invisible spirit who inhabits the water courses in Egypt. In Egypt, we have Mat, which meant divine truth and justice. I recite many of the passages in the Mat. When Yoshi Mat, he has that recitation in his video where everybody's looking for me. Again, it's very important in a sense to understand that Amun, that was that secret god, but it was supposed to have been the fishes. It was a god in a sense that unified man in a sense with the spiritual elements, and unified man with the ability in a sense to conquer the waters, that manifested the idea that man could rule the earth and the heavens through his creativity, through his intuition, and through his skill. The Kushites had writing. Here you can see some of the letters in many of the writing systems that exist in ancient times. If we move from left and right, we can see some of the inscription. We can see writing from South Indian megalithic, then Uruk. That would be in a sense Sumer, Proto-Elamite. Then we see letters from the Indus Valley, Murdertech, Linear B, Linear A. Linear A was a writing system used in Crete. And then finally, we can see the Via Manding writing system. You can see how these writing systems were unified because most of these people, in a sense, their ancestors belonged to the Ma Confederacy. Because they belonged to the Ma Confederacy, this writing system, which I refer to as thinite in much of my research, was used by all of these people. You see, that's why they're always telling us their story. You see, the European here tell you that we don't really know about these ancient civilizations, but hey, they left us a lot of information. Here's some more writing. At Gebel Sheikh Suleiman, there's an inscription. And this appears to date back to the Sea Group peoples 5,000 years old. And the Gebel Sheikh inscription is very interesting. When you read the inscriptions on the boat, you see the boat, you see the royal who has his hand tied behind his back, and we see these inscriptions. And let's read what these inscriptions read. I translated them. And they say, "Thou family habitation, hold it upright. Phase the status on the shore of the watercourse. Cut thou the sepulchre, habitation for the family here. Fay preferred to be obedient to the order. Lay low the celebrity in the large hemisphere tomb, and offer up libations that merit upright virtue. Pure righteousness is King Fay." Again, in a sense, we see many elements associated with the early Egyptians and Chemedians. And what is that? They built mounds over the burial places of their kings. They had their rulers. And this inscription from Gebel Sheikh Suleiman shows some of this ingenuity. The Kushites spoke similar language. They found the civilization in Sumer, Elam, and the Indus Valley. And they also had the Libico Berber writing and Minoan civilization. Here you can see some of the various water courses, and you can see all of these rivers that exist in Africa. This is only a few of them. This isn't even taking into account the mega lakes. So as you can see, this is why we find so many boats depicted on the rocks in the Sahara, because of the fact, in the sense that this was a very aquatic environment. It was an environment where it was a lot of water, and this is one of the reasons why we see this idea, where we see, in a sense, this constant referral to this moss civilization, this fish civilization, because the leaders had to be like fishes. They had to be able, in a sense, to control and navigate the waters, but also to create an area in which people could have dry land. Again, you can see some of the boats. Again, we see that the boats and streams, in a sense, we see that many of these boats, as I said earlier, had oars. They also made a lot of pottery, and the pottery made was mainly red and black. And, these potters, in a sense, they were able, in a sense, to transfer this pottery tradition, the red and black pottery tradition, across Egypt all the way to Egypt. Yes, they had the same style pottery all the way from Nubia into upper and lower Egypt, throughout the Levant, into Sumer, and all the way to ancient China. And these people were great potters. They were great, in a sense, artists, as you might imagine. The Prosarians took their red and black pottery and boat technology and writing to other parts of the world. You can see how they had the Saharan civilizations. You can see the migration of the people out of Middle Africa into Asia, across the seas, down in the point. And here you can see some of the red and black pottery. On the right-hand side, you can see at the top, you can see the pottery, in the sense that they found in Nubia, the red and black pottery. And this pottery goes back to 4000 BC. And then right under it, you can see in a sense, the red and black pottery from Dravidian pottery from India. And as you can see, this red and black pottery tradition, it not only existed in Nubia, Egypt, Mesopotamia, but all the way into India. That just shows the continuity, of the culture and the civilization. The modern representation of the Kushites include many of the people in Africa today. The Kushites remained supreme around the world until 1400 to 1200 BC. During this period, the Hua, Chinese, and Indo-European Ai speakers began to conquer the Kushites, whose cities and economies were destroyed as a result of natural catastrophes, which took place on the planet between 1400 and 1200 BC. Yes, it was around this period that they had the great volcano at Santorino. The volcano at Santorino destroyed many black civilizations. and after it destroyed these black civilizations, Caucasians and Asians were able, in a sense, to occupy these civilizations and conquer these people because of the fact that they had been weakened by natural catastrophes. Later, after 500 AD, Turkish-speaking people began to settle parts of Central Asia. This is the reason behind the presence of the KSH element in many place names in Asia. You see Kashgar, Hindu Kush, Kash, and other places, in a sense, throughout Asia, Eurasia. Let the researcher do the researcher. Again, if you want to learn how to be a researcher, get my book, Pathfinder, Clyde Winters in Search of the Roots of Afrocentrism, a memoir. Tells you how I became a researcher, and it can help you to become a researcher. And get my book, Afrocentric Researcher, which can teach you the skills necessary to do qualitative and quantitative research. Get these books. Let the researcher do the researcher. You too can be a researcher. Read these books and learn how. You can get these books on the Kushites, Kushites who would win where, Nile Valley History and the Rig Veda, using the Common Core state standards, to teach Kushite history. Get these books. You can order all of these books on Amazon.com. Much of what we know about Tasseti comes from the cemetery of Kustal. By 3300 BC, the A group people of Tasseti established the first monarchy in human history. This would have been a monarchy down in Upper Egypt, where Narmer came from. Artifacts recently discovered in the Kustal tombs near the Sudanese border show various symbols of Tasseti royalty. These are some of the artifacts that they found. And remember that Tasseti means land of the bow. This is the Kustal incense burner. And they used this incense burner to show that even during this early period, the people in Upper Egypt and Nubia had a similar similar culture. We find, in a sense, on the Kustel, we find, in a sense, these various symbols. We find the palace facade. We find, in a sense, a prisoner that is remember this prisoner that's with his hands tied behind his back. He almost looked like the prisoner that we see on the sheikh inscription. Then we see the crown of Upper Egypt. Then we see other figures that relate, in a sense, to this great civilization. On the stone incense burden from Kustal, we see depicted a palace facade, a crowned king sitting on a throne in a boat. A royal standard stood before the king, and hovering above him is the falcon god Horus. The crown was later the crown worn by the Upper Egyptian kings. This is evidence of kingship in ancient Kush. Yes, yes, yes. These symbols were later used by Egyptian kings to demonstrate their kingship. Very important to understand that these images that later became, in a sense, the standards of what we call Kemet had really began down in Nubia. The Tarsidi recognized the first nome of Upper Egypt. Here's some of the pottery and jewelry from Tarsidi. But it's very important in a sense is that Kustel monument, that Kustel, artifact, is found by Dr. Williams, and it talks about the Stu founding of Egypt. And Dr. Williams noted that direct progression of royal complex designs from Kustel to Heracleopolis to Abydos, Egyptian objects in the Kata 3 to AB tombs, all these relate to this too. We also, in a sense, see a mention of a pharaoh Pehor. And I think that this pharaoh Pehor was the Fae in the inscription I read from you, that I read to you earlier. I translated with the guy on the boat, and his hands were tied behind his back. And they mentioned, in a sense, King Fae. I think that King Fae would have been Pehor, at Kustal. You see, because Fae, would have been about the same, F and P. Here's the Tehenu palette. The Temihus, the Tehunus, were agro-pastoral population lived both in villages and Dwami towns. The Tehenu lived in the delta between the Temehu and the Egyptians. The Egyptians referred to all the people of this area most often by a generic term Tehenu. They were cultivating millet and other crops. So here you can see some of the people who were working in the fields. Here we can see the inscriptions for the Temehu. Temehu. These are the variants. You can see the country, Temehu, and then you can see the people, Temehuti. The Temehu appear to have been a more clearly defined branch of the Tehenu. That they were themselves made up of more than one tribe is clear from the context of their territories. That the Temehu appeared to the Egyptians to have been a well-defined group is shown by their being listed with such ethnic groups as Urret, Urktet, Mazue, Yao, Wawat, and Kao. This is a translation from. They used to always call them Negroes of the South. In other words, they wanted to say that Kush meant Negroes. It didn't mean Negroes, but this is just a way, in a sense, that the European was trying to differentiate and make it appear that the Egyptians, even though they were black, were different from the Nubians, who they referred to as Negroes, just to really reinforce it. The inhabitants of the Fazan were round-headed Africans. These people, in a sense, they inhabited the area. They were, the Tehenu was divided into two groups. We had the Tehenu in the north and the Nahisi in the south. The Nahisi represented as a singular Kushite or African type. As a result, in most translation of Egyptian texts by Egyptologists, Nahisi was translated as Negro. They did this to imply that the Egyptians were non-black, and only the Nahisi were blacks in the Nile Valley. Here you can see some of the Nahisi people were cattle herders. You can see them moving their cattle through their fields from place to place. And this was just, in a sense, to show the genius of these African people, the genius of these comedians. Here you can see where the Tehenu lived and the Temehu. And you can see, in a sense, this is an ethnic geography. And you can see that these people were mainly, in a sense, believed to have lived in the Fazan. And we can see along the Nile Valley would have been what we call Kemet. And we can see how these other people, these other black tribal groups, mainly referred to as Sea group people, they were living more in the Fazan you know, to the west of the Comedians. A Tehinu personage is depicted on an Amranthian period pottery. The Tehinu wore a pointed beard, phalanx sheath, and feathers on their head. You can see that picture over there? Do you note the beard? Do you note the plaited hair and feathers? The Tamerus are called the Sea Group people by archaeologists. The central Fezzan, that's in Libya, was a center of Sea Group settlement, you know. The Tamerus or Sea Group people began to settle Kush around 2200 BC. You see, the kings of Kush had their capital at Kerma in Dongola. Another great civilization of Kush was founded by the Sea Group people. The Sea Group people developed their own civilization, characterized by red and black pottery. Again, you can see these symbols. We went through this symbol already. Translate on this, you don't see the inscriptions that they had on that boat, but you can still see the king. And it seems as though when they were conquering, much of this seems to refer to, you know, the various Comedian kings conquering the other nations along the Nile and forcing them to join Kemet. Because as you can see, that many of these depictions they depict royal people, and then you can see the dead bodies, the bodies around the boat, and this would represent them being conquered, and they were being conquered by the the people of Horus, the Comedians. Here's some more things related to the Sea Group people, who you can see a cemetery in Lower Nubia, and then on the other side you can see a gravestone of a Nubian mercenary. These are just some of the artifacts that relate to the so-called Sea Group people. They have A and C. A is supposed to be the pre-Comedian civilization. Then, in a sense, C is supposed to be the Kushite civilizations. The Sea Group are the round-headed people depicted in Saharan rock art. You can see some of the people now. These people would be considered Sea Group people. And you find them depicted on much of the rock art in the Sahara. Because don't forget, even though Sahara is a desert today, in the past it was, in a sense, green and fertile. Here you can see some Sea Group people who formerly lived in the highland regions of the Fezzan and the Hagar. These are highland areas or plateau areas. In this area, they cultivated millet, sorghum, and rice. Yes, rice was being cultivated thousands and thousands of years ago. They raised cattle, which they recognized as a source of food and wealth. You can see some of the people are working with their cattle. They got them lined up. They're organizing them. You can see some of the adults, and you can see the children who was also working with them. You can see the women down at the bottom, and these women, in a sense, they look like they were they were there. They were supporting the men who were the basic cattle herders, according, at least, if you're going to interpret this inscription, this particular artist creation of that period back in the day. The Sea Group people developed a wonderful civilization, Kush. Here's a thing I showed you earlier, and this shows the inhabitants of the African Crescent after 1400 BC. Here we can move from left to right. We have the Ramit. That's the Egyptians. We see the Tehenu. That's the persons with the braid. Then we see the Nahisi. We see them, in a sense, in the middle. And if you notice, the Nahisi, which would have been the Kushites, and the Ramit, who were the Egyptians, they wore similar styles. And in fact, it's very difficult to really tell the difference between them. And even when we know that even when Egypt went into design and to decline, it was the 25th dynasty from Kush that reinvigorated Egyptian civilization. And then we can see the Amu. See, the Amu are what we call the Caucasian Indo-European people at the far right. The Sea Group people made a characteristic red and black pottery. Members of this group took the pottery style from Nubia into Iran, India, and China, where the Kushites created new civilizations. One of the Taino civilizations were the Proto-Saharans. Due to changes in Middle Africa, the Proto-Saharans later colonized other parts of Africa and Asia. During moderate climatic conditions, it was possible for the Proto-Saharans to engage in intensive plant domestication. Food surpluses led to the rise of towns and cities, complex political organizations, and social ranking of individuals in society. This also led to craft specialization as certain clans and ethnic groups became more sedentary. Yes, the ability to produce more food, the ability to produce reliable food resources meant that you could create these cities and create this civilization in Africa. Again, you can see, we see the Tehenu, the Ramet or the Comedians, and also the Kushites. Kerma was an important site of the Kushite state between 2450 to 1450 BC. This is how Kerma looked today. Back in the day, everything would have been super green. It would have been much more fertile. Kerma was the royal city of surrounding areas. Here there are indications that the Kermans smelted metals, built fine homes, and established a manufacturing area for goods they exported to Egypt. This in a sense was a temple of the people at Kerma. Kerma was typified by great architecture and art. One of the major temples for the worship of Amun was situated in the city of Kerma. Originally, the city was surrounded by a stone wall. So this monument in the background, that would have been, in a sense, that would have been dedicated to Amun. So it would have had a little different structure. It would have been looking different. But now, over the years, since the over the few thousand years that have passed, the wind has torn up. The wind has cut away some of the features of this monument that was dedicated to the god Amun. Here you can see, in a sense, here's one of the skeletal remains. You can see some of the fine artwork that they found in their tombs because it was a wealthy state. This is how, this is what they believe, in a sense, would have been how Kerma would have looked back in the day. This is a reconstruction that archaeologists has made. As you can see, it was a very nice place. It had a wall around it. And this would represent the golden age when Kerma was very powerful. Pharaoh Ahmose was a brilliant strategist and military leader, and under him the Egyptian military flourished. He retook the lands that had been lost on Kerma after 1550. Egyptian pharaohs needed to overcome Kerma to guarantee power over Upper Egypt. The war with the Kemites went on for a long time, with losses and victories, and Pharaoh Thutmose annexed and absorbed into the Egyptian empire Kerma, people in their territory. It was Pharaoh Thutmose that ended the kingdom of Kerma. Let the researcher do the research. Don't forget, if you want to become a researcher, buy my book, Pathfinder, Clive Winter's In Search of the Roots of Afrocentrism, a memoir, and also get my book, Afrocentric Researcher. It can help you to be a researcher too. Yes, let the researcher do the research. Also, don't forget, you can find out more about the Kushites in my books, The Kushites, Who, What, When, Where, Nile Valley History in the Rig Veda, and my book, Using Common Core State Standards to Teach Kushite History. The Hyksos ruled Egypt from 1650 to 1550. The Hyksos were allies of their fellow Kushites living in Kerma. Yes. They always teach you that the Hyksos were invaders. The Hyksos were not invaders. The Hyksos, in a sense, they were the people of Lower Egypt. They continued to always want to be like Kushite. Even Seti I. Seti I, when he was a ruler down in Egypt, he came from Lower Egypt, and by the simple fact that his name was Seti showed that he was worshiping the god Seti. But he was, in a sense, a firm believer in Comedian civilization and Comedian history. Recent research on the people of Lower Egypt make it clear that the Hyksos were not invaders of Egypt, as claimed by Anti-Diop and other researchers. The textual evidence from the Hyksos documents make it clear that they considered themselves to be Kushites, as noted above. And remember, in a sense, Hyksos, that was also the name of Narmer's people, the Hyksos. And they called their state Hyksta, Kush. So Hykst was the name for the Kushites in Lower Egypt. Again, we can see Narmer, we can see in a sense his bula, which shows that Hyksos was the original name of Kushites. Stantas and her co-authors collected enamel samples from the teeth of 75 ancient people in 3 locations at Tel El Daba. That's up in Lower Egypt. They scrutinized the enamel for strontium isotopes. And what they found in the sense that these people had been living at Tel El Daba and that they were local people. Here you can see something. So we know that Hyksos, even though you've been told that the Hyksos were invaders, they weren't invaders. That was just a name that that the people called themselves in Lower Egypt, as I've shown you already ever since Narmer time. Do you see the lies that Europeans teach you? Do you see the lies that they teach you about history? Do you see the lie they taught you that it was some Hyksos that came from Asia and they conquered Lower Egypt and then they went to war with ancient Kemet? No, the war between the Hyksos and the Upper Egyptians, that was just a civil war, you see, because you'll find in a sense that the Hyksos also were joined in their attacks on Upper Egypt with their Kushite allies down in Kush. They were both in a sense threatening and fighting the Comedians, and so the Comedians in Upper Egypt did a wonderful job in terms of protecting their territory and being able, in a sense, not to allow the Hyksos in Lower Egypt and the Hyksos or Kushites in Kush to be able to conquer the civilization. Tamek was a name for Lower Egypt. Tamek is mentioned in the Winnie and Una inscriptions. The people in Tamek refer to themselves as Hyksos or Has. Since the Hyksos were native to Lower Egypt, the Hyksos War should be seen as a civil war in which the Lower Egyptians were asserting a return to their Kushite origins instead of an Asian invasion. For example, Seti means of Set, which indicates that Pharaoh Seti was consecrated to the god Set. For example, second frequency teaches you that the god Set was hated by the Egyptians. This was false. Set was the god of the Hyksos. Set was also the god of Pharaoh Seti. Seti I was the son of Ramses, more commonly known as Ramses I, meaning born of Ra, and Sitre, daughter of Ra. He was born in the year 1323 BC, and he died in 1279 BC in Avaris, Lower Egypt. So as you can see, don't get it twisted. It wasn't any Asians invading Egypt. Hyksos, they were nothing but Lower Egyptians. And, you can see some of the Hyksos. You can see an Hyksos woman, and then you can see Pharaoh. You can see Pharaoh Apepi. These are Hyksos. These people are also Hyksos. These Kushites, they're being led by a guy called Apsha. As you can see their Egyptian garb. You can see their dress. They weren't any Asians. They were Kushites. The Nubian Kushites helped subjugate Egyptians. The Kushites of Lower Egypt and Nubia were allies. During the Hyksos dynasty, Governor Sabek Nakht of El Kab, a city near Thebes, reported he had to put down an invasion of Egypt by the Kushites in Nubia. Inscriptions in Sobek Hanat's tomb tell us that the Kush Hyksos came. He has stirred up the tribes of Wawat, the islands of Kinnet Netter, the land of Punt, and the Magi. So as you can see, because of the fact that the people in Lower Egypt, the Hyksos, consider themselves Kushites, they were able to get allies from the Kushites that lived in Wawat, Magi, Tamek. See, do your own research. That's why we need research, and let the researcher do the research. But you can't accept, just because Europeans say something, you can't accept that as valid and true. A lot of times what the Europeans are teaching you are lies. You have to do the research on your own to understand the history of our people. One of the first mentions of Hyksos are found in the Winnie inscriptions written during the 5th dynasty of Egypt. The Winnie inscription was composed by the Egyptian governor of the south, Uni. Most regions accept the contemporary meaning of Gardner's N25 symbol as rulers of foreign lands, not Kush. But this was not the first meaning assigned to this sign. Breasted translated Kush as Negro or Negro land. That wasn't what that wasn't what it was. We're talking about Kushites, but he called it, Breasted called it Negro land. So you see how they are. So we can see in this here's the Winnie inscription, and makes it clear that the name Hus was made up of 3 N25 signs from Gardner's list of Egyptian signs. The N25 signs also represent Hash or Kush. This means that N25 represents the name Hush, the ethnonym of the Kushites. You'll find these symbols when you look at the Winnie inscription. This is column 46 when it talks about the ruler of Wasat or Wawat. Hyksos kings were proud of their Kushite origin. In Hyksos seals, the kings wrote their names as follows: Hahahas, Hekahas, kings of the Kushites. These sealings are primary contemporaneous ancient Egyptian literature documentation, indicating that the Hyksos used the name to illustrate their Kushite ancestry and relationship to the Nubian Kushites. Here you can see the Hekahas. You can see the sign Hekahas. You can see it in front of Abishari. That's Abishari, and he has this. He has, in a sense, his animal with him. But you can see in front the Hekahas, and then you also find Hekahas on many of the amulets, and other things that were made by the various Hyksos rulers. For example, this inscription reads, "The Kushite king Abishari," whereas on the Simkin scarab, that's the scarab at the top, we read Hakahast, plural marker, and the plural marker 3, which reads, "The king of the Kushites, Simkin." Here's the Turin royal canon where the Hyksos were styled Hekahasut, the same name they called the other Kushites in Nubia. So again, in a sense, we see that the Hyksos rulers, they're on the Turin royal canon. And here we can see the Egyptian king Nehesi. His name means Nubian. And I've also shown you how Nehesi, the interesting thing about him, he was not just the ruler of Egypt. He was also the ruler of the Sioux Empire. Yes. There was another civilization, another empire within the Egyptian empire. And the Sioux Empire, it extended into Asia. And I wrote a book on the Sioux Empire. Check out my book, find out more. The New Kingdom followed the Hyksos dynasty. The New Kingdom lasted from 1549 to 1292. During the New Kingdom, Egyptians used the name Amra, as a generic name for the Asians. The term Habiru was an ethnonym for one of the Asian tribes. It is clear that the Habiru and the Hakahasut were the same people. They would have had the same name given the fact the New Kingdom began at the end of the Hakahasut dynasty. In summary, Tamek means Lower Egypt. Since Tamek was a name for Lower Egypt, in addition to Libya, makes it clear that the Kushites or Nehesi did not live only in Nubia, but also in Lower Egypt, where they were called the Hyksos. Here you can see, this is how you can see in a sense that the Kushites lived in Wawat. Here you can see the Winnie inscription. If we go from left to right, we see King Narmer. We see his Bula, where he talks about the Hyksos, that he was called a Hyksos, and his country was Hyksos. And we can see the Winnie inscription. On the Winnie inscription, you see Hyksos again. See? Then we can see King Apepi or Apophis, the king of, this king in a sense, of the various Hyksos. And then you can see some of the other inscriptions that also have Hekahafst, or, the kings of Kush. Again, you can get my books on the Kushites, who, what, when, where, Nile Valley history in the Rig Veda. They're not like us. No, they're not like us. They're not like us because you love your history. And you come here every Thursday to hear me talk these history gems. And these history gems tell us who and what we are. They're not like us. They're not like us. We're always proud to be members of the brilliant Black race. They not like us. They not like us. We always have pride in our brilliant Black race. Yes, yes. Let the researcher do the research. Get my book, Pathfinder, Clyde Winters in Search of the Roots of Afrocentrism, a memoir that can help you to be a researcher. Learn how I became a researcher. Let the researcher do the research. Get my book, Afrocentric Researcher. This book will be a guide to tell you how to do, in a sense, research. Not just qualitative research, but also quantitative research. It'll teach you how to use quantitative numerical, analysis, like the t-test, and also the chi-square. Get my books, The Kushites, Who, What, When, Where, Now, the Nile Valley History and the Rig Veda, and using Common Core standards to teach Kushite history. Get these books. Learn about the Kushites. B1, Black first, brilliant first. Yes, yes, yes. It's Black first, it's brilliant first. We have to understand, in a sense, that we're Black first. We're brilliant first, and it's very important that we understand this. Also, it's important in a sense that that you guys support Yoshimad. Yoshimad made my introductory video. Yoshimad can do some good work for you. Support this brother. Support the genius, Yoshimad, because we're B1, Black first, brilliant first. We are Black and brilliant. Support our Yoshimad, support the brother. As I said, the genius is out here. He's here to help you. He can, you guys are coming up pretty soon. You guys are coming up with your family reunions. Yoshimad can make a beautiful video for you. He can make a video that you can use, and it can make your thing a fantastic affair. Support the genius, Yoshimad. Dorvell says that if I'm in the west side of a city and my destination is in Asia, Asia only means east. I do not have to leave the city or state. How you doing? How you doing, Tons Phi? Yes, Tons Phi. You are the man. He makes some very beautiful jewelry. Check out some of his merchandise. Tones 5.
Since the gold touch your heart with the dinner rolls. Shake the spirit one time, it gets old. She gon' take me out of space into another zone. Free spirit, she ain't messing with them petty hoes. Microwaves and cobalt outside her phone. Smoking in that vibe and smoking good on that drone. Call me eating out with the cuz all up in a fro. This queen approach, she gon' drop it low to the flow. You know she liquid gold with the alchemy in the bowl. Trippy super soul is the greatest tale never told. She gon' get you right, you can set up on your goals. You gon' spend the night in the harmon out with your toes. Know she super fine and the aura down to her bones. Super magic fairy, I'm lost in the rituals. She give me life like butterflies on the rose. Really rich and old, ain't nothing like cracker trolls. Sitting in the clothes and extraterrestrial. And she never fold, trap crackers up in the throat. She drink your wine, she rock you up like a pole. And she spark my mind with intellectual codes. Shake butter oils and linger up in your nose. Independent goddess like rhythm up in the soul.
Yellow honey, drip slow, sweet agave at the toe. Independent finance, wine, citrus mist. My Wonder Woman, I wonder how to.
Joan said something interesting. Thank you, Dr. Winters. Great lectures always. We need this research. I'm working on more books and articles coming soon. This is motivational and inspiring. That's cool. But this is also something that she made me think. She said, just a thought, perhaps the Yardanes are indications of the ley lines that were used by ancient peoples worldwide as energy points that Euros lied about as useful thoughts. But my thought about this is this, Joan, is that there's a place in Ireland called Shining Stones, and I believe it was some method. It was some method that how you doing, JP? There was some methods in a sense. It was some methods that these people knew how to take energy from stone. Somehow they produced energy with these stones. I really believe, they make some pictures and they show the Egyptians trying to carry these stones. And the point is this: I don't think they used to carry the stones. I think somehow they had a way to levitate these stones. There's no way these men could have carried stones that were a ton. I think they had some process in which they could levitate the stones, and then they would be able to levitate the stones and place them in and put them in the correct positions. And I think that they had some other technology that they used to be able to produce energy, to be able, in a sense, to produce energy from these stones that allowed them to be able to make these stone places energy factories, places in a sense. And I think that's why we see so many stone all over the place. Somehow they were able to extract stone. I think I read this before, but JP said, thank you, Dr. Winters. Great lecture as always. We need this research. I'm working on more books and articles coming soon. This is motivational inspiring. JP, that's right. I want you to write more books and articles, but always remember this, JP, that if you write too many books, you'll have to get your degree in maybe educational psychology or something else that deals with curriculum that will still be dealing with producing knowledge. But again, in a sense, if you write too many books, you're not going to have any professors that can teach you. You're not going to have any professors that can teach you because you'll be wrote so many books that they're going to be jealous of you. Always keep this in mind. That doesn't mean it should stop you. Joan says this. She said, thanks, Doc. My thoughts as well. Levitation with sound frequency. That could be true, because look what African people, Black people can do with sounds. But, remember they used to have the talking drum. So maybe it wasn't a way that they could, in a sense, produce certain sounds, certain frequencies that allowed them to levitate these stones and move them in a sense, let them move from place to place, and that this is something that you may want to do. JP Yoshimod says, JP, let me do the cover, the book cover. Contact Yoshimod at Gumroad and go to his website. Go to his website, contact him. He wants to help you with a cover for your book. It's very, so I'll check him out and see what up. No, again, in a sense, thank you guys for coming. And knowledge is power, but we have to stop accepting. I talked to you about the Hyksos. I showed you how the Hyksos, who the Europeans told you were Asian invasion. I told you how they said the Hyksos was some proto Hebrews that came from Asia, and then they conquered Egypt. As you can see, the Hyksos did not come from Asia. The Hyksos was just the name of the people in Lower Egypt, and that the Hyksos, in a sense, was also the name of what Narmer called the country that he came from, you see. And this is very important. This is very important in a sense that you understand this, that you understand that they're lying to us. They're lying to us about a lot of things, They're lying to us about history. They're lying to us. They don't want us to know the truth. Because if you know the truth, then you'll understand that it's more to our history than what they taught you. Dorval says, Levant means rising, a levitation. True. But the point is this, is that Dorval is a man with words. He's a philologist. I used to do philology back in the day until I started getting into linguistics. But it's very important to understand that I say, oh, yes, yes, yes. Blessings, blessings. Grant this prayer. I say, oh, grant this prayer, baby. Grant the prayer. Grant the prayer that we can work together. And not only that we can work together, but that in the sense that we can see and know what's important. Timeless voice, Souza. Timeless voice, Souza, JP. This is interesting. How you doing? And they say, thanks, Dr. Clyde Winters, for this continuation of excellent work. Thank you very much for your support. Joan says, be safe out here in these streets, fam. Thanks again, dear Baba. B1, yes, B1, we're B1. Understand that. Understand that we have to stick together. Understand that we have to, in a sense, share with one another. Understand, in a sense, if you don't want to stand up, support the ones who do. Yes, if you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do.
If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. Vampires, they prey on your fears and stay away. Vampires, they prey on your fears, control your atmosphere. Don't let them take your energy. Don't let them take your control your atmosphere. I am you and control your atmosphere. Don't let them take your energy. Don't let them suck your energy. It's a distraction away from me. I am you and you are me. If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. If you're not going to speak up, support the ones who do. Nobody but yourself. Don't follow. I said nobody but yourself. Don't follow. Nobody but yourself. Don't follow yourself. Nobody yourself. Nobody but yourself.
B1, black first. B1, brilliant first. We are black and brilliant.